It's been actually fairly difficult. Obviously, the lockdown carried on after our previous chat. It continued, so we still went without people. So all in all, I mean, talking personally from our side, we went 145 days with no guests, which is obviously that's a huge loss. We rely on footfall to be able to fund the park, to pay salaries, to feed animals. But yeah, we were able to pull through it. But yeah, it's eased up. Obviously, as the lockdowns eased up, our industry eased up. We saw people coming out of towners coming down to the coast for holidays and things like that, which meant that we were able to have some form of footfall. It wasn't the same as previous years. So yeah, I think the main effect has been financial, obviously on the whole tourism industry. Everyone has kind of just taken a big knock, from hotels to obviously luxuries. Places like Crocworld are a luxury essentially, so not everyone can actually afford to just go to Crocworld all the time. It's something that you do on holiday once every now and then type of thing. One of the regulations that has obviously affected us is the gatherings, the no gatherings. So we've got a restaurant on site, which means obviously it's an indoor restaurant, which means that you're only allowed 50 people to gather inside. So that obviously hampers numbers. And then in outdoor gatherings, we were allowed 250 people. We got a massive park, so 250 people is actually not a lot of people. And now, since the last speech, there's now no gatherings. So we've had to stop all our talks and feedings and that, which has obviously affected numbers again. So yeah, I think that's the biggest effect we've had is the no gathering rule. To my knowledge, most of them have. So a lot of the bigger parks and conservation centers, zoos and things like that were able to continue operating. There definitely have been smaller facilities that have had to close though, which is obviously a huge loss. You've got to think about where those animals go and that kind of thing. So, but for the most part, the big facilities have been able to continue running. It's just the small guys who have taken a knock. Well, if I look at us, so December we had fairly good numbers coming through the park, and then again the president's speech happened, and our numbers since the 1st of January, our numbers have pretty much halved from December. So I think that's the biggest thing. As soon as the levels start increasing on the lockdown, the tourism industry automatically takes a knock. So you've got hotels, you've got conservation parks, zoos, all these things that rely on tourists. Basically, you've obviously got a local market that you can capture, but that local market, for the most part, it kind of is your bread and butter, but you need the tourists to be able to make money, to be able to improve the park, to be able to maybe increase the amount of animals that you can keep. So I think that's the biggest thing, again, is just literally footfall. The higher the levels go, the less people you get through the park. And yeah, obviously that affects us big time. Fortunately, as I mentioned in the previous one, we are privately owned by quite a big company. So for us, it's not something we look at in terms of funding. It's not something that we have to. Obviously, there are people who would need to look at the funding, well, outside funding if they can find it. But for us, we've got a company, like a parent company, who clouds us and who does keep us going, fortunately. I think 2021 kind of needs to be a recuperating year. Businesses like us and in our industry have, as mentioned, taken a big knock. So I think you've got to recuperate before you can look to grow again. We need to recuperate the lost money, get back to equilibrium, and then look to grow and expand and do all these things that everyone wants to do. So I think that's the main aim for 2021, is basically a year to just recuperate what you've lost, because essentially in this industry everyone has lost. So yeah, I think it's just a recuperation period for people to get back on their feet. In this industry, it's been affected a lot. Obviously, from a personal point of view, at Crocworld, we, as mentioned, are backed by the parent company. So we fortunately have not had to retrench anyone, but the industry as a whole has had a very how do I put it? It's been actually quite a hectic decline in firstly job availability, and secondly in an increase in job loss. So you've got a lot of people that have had to be retrenched, roles that aren't seen as essential anymore. Whereas before, when you've got all the numbers coming through parks and hotels and things like that, you need these extra staff, you need hands, you need all these things that you can add onto it, activities. But that all falls away now. It becomes null and void. It's not essential. So you keep your essential staff, your management, your guys who are on the ground, and you run like that. So there has been an increase in job loss, definitely, and definitely a decrease in job availability in the industry. Obviously, when you enter the park, you're sanitized, you have to be wearing a mask. We've got social distancing markers almost in all essential areas in the park. We've had to stop all our public interactions, so handling of crocodiles, feeding of crocodiles for the public. Obviously, we still keep all our feedings going, but we just don't do it for public view anymore. So pretty much everything that we do that creates a crowd, which is your croc feeds, our bird feeds, all those kind of things. And then, yeah, it's just we've got certain sanitizing points in the park. Obviously, we've increased our cleaning of places that are high contact areas, so snake windows, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, we've also deep cleaned the place before our busy season, just to make sure that we don't, we've kind of covered all of our bases. What we're doing is just keeping our loyal customers informed. So any new regulations, any new, anything that affects us, we're basically putting on social media and just letting people know so that they have a heads up, like, okay, there's a good chance that Crocworld's closing on X amount, which is not the case, fortunately, at the moment. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing we can do, is just to keep customers informed. And then if we do end up having to close, it's just to keep top of mind. So constantly posting, constantly doing videos, constantly doing things that keep people top of mind, so that when we are able to reopen, we get people back through the doors.